Welcome to Listen First Learning's webinar on choice boards. Today we're going to be talking about what makes a good choice board and how you can use them to make instructional decisions. I'm Jamie Beecham, and together with my colleague Allison Kaiser, we're going to be talking about choice boards with you.
As educators, we have a problem right now. How do we allow students to meaningfully practice at home and show them that we value them as learners? There are many digital resources being put out there right now, but technology is not always the answer. So, how do we know that our students are doing the work and therefore doing the learning? What makes good instruction? The 2020 school year will be challenging, but we can't lose sight of what makes good instruction. We still need to meet our students' needs and help them to learn and grow. Jamie and I have developed one piece of the solution that we will talk to you throughout this webinar. We have designed choice boards for kindergarten through 8th grade in math. We have to listen to children to know what they're thinking and where they are in their thinking and their learning. By giving students a choice, we're giving them a voice. Technology can serve a purpose, but if it doesn't let us know how the children are thinking, then it won't help us to make sound instructional decisions. We also need to be cognizant of screen time for children. We know that there are many digital resources online right now, but we also need to make sure that we aren't having children sit in front of a computer screen all day. According to studies from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization, their findings contributed to recommendations that children should have 2 hours or less of sedentary screen time each day.
And when we're thinking about the instructional decisions that we're making, we want to get the biggest bang for our buck. We want to have the most impact on kids. And we know that being with the teacher in this interaction is really what's going to move kids along. So when you're considering practice and you're considering how you want your kids to practice, you want to think about, do I want to be adding on to sitting in front of the computer, or do I want that time in front of the computer to be meaningful and with me and to push the students further in their understanding along these concepts? So whenever you're considering whatever solution, especially choice boards, you want to think about how are you contributing to that screen time as well.
We also need to make sure that students who do not have the technology have an equitable education to those who do have the technology. Jamie and I do have some technology woven into our choice boards, virtual manipulatives, games on websites, apps, because there are engaging and motivating qualities with technology. But we try to keep a balance and not having children do all of the math on a computer.
So what is a choice board? A choice board is essentially a way for students to choose how they learn. There's three purposes for choice boards. One is to prepare students for learning. The second is to practice what they are learning. And the third is to create a project to synthesize all that they have learned. When you're looking at choice boards, really think about these three purposes. We're going to dive a little deeper into each of these. The first purpose we're going to dive into is preparing students for the content that they're going to be learning. When you think about the content, like let's say adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, there's certain prerequisite skills that the children need to have in place so that they will be successful with their learning. So if we take adding and subtracting with unlike denominators, they need to know how to add and subtract with like denominators. They need to know how to build models of fractions. They need to know how to find equivalent fractions. These are the kind of things that you would see in a prepared choice board. Also, with the end of the school year last year being a little bit crazy everywhere, we're not quite sure what the students learned last year, which makes these prepared choice boards essential so that way we know the kids are prepared to learn the content. The second purpose of a choice board is to practice what they're learning with you. So if you had a Zoom lesson, this would be something that they could go practice the content that they just learned. I read a research article that described practice as muscle memory, and they talked about swimmers and their strokes. And they said when swimmers swim, the coach will constantly correct their stroke so that way they practice and they get into muscle memory exactly how it feels to have the perfect stroke. You want your choice boards to have the exact type of thinking that you want to see in your students as how they practice. So if you want them to problem solve, you need to make sure that that practice aligns with what you value. If you want your students to infer, then make sure the practice aligns with the values. Practice can also be broken down into some of the skills that the students need. This way, when you look at your students' work on the choice boards, you can see this might be a gap because that's where they got it wrong. So if we're thinking about an ELA choice board and you're working on text-dependent questions, you may have 3 different genres. You may have narrative, informational, and poetry on there. And notice that the kids are getting all the poetry questions wrong. Then you know it's not necessarily a text-dependent question problem, it's more of a genre problem. When considering the design of the choice boards, you want to make sure that your practice choice boards align with your core values of what you're teaching. And you also want to make sure that it has a variety of skills so that you can assess where instructional gaps may be. The final purpose of choice boards is projects. This is a chance for the student to synthesize all the skills that they've learned and apply it to a new novel situation. Project choice boards usually are more time involved for the students and usually have a higher complexity. This is also something that you want to be grading. This is where they have had prepare time, they've practiced, and now it's really time for them to show what they know.
Jamie just talked to you about what choice boards are. So what are choice boards not? The goal of choice boards is to help students understand and learn the concepts. The goal is not to just get another grade from students. Grading practices are up to the teacher, but we highly recommend not grading the prepare and the practice choice boards. Students need time to be exposed to the concepts and to practice the concepts with specific intentional feedback from their teacher. The project choice board could be graded. This choice board is where the students are showing you what they have learned about the concept. This is a picture of Jamie with one of her preschool classes. We wanted to point out that choice boards are not the entire solution to this school year. Choice boards should supplement your instruction and not replace good instruction from the teacher. What is the difference between choice boards, menu boards, playlists, and tic-tac-toe boards? They are all very similar and just have slight differences in their appearance. But the importance is that children must have a say in how they are learning. Give them autonomy. But not all choice boards, playlists, menu boards, and tic-tac-toe boards are equal. We will explain what you should be looking for when implementing choice boards with your students. These are the 5 criteria that make a good choice board: student autonomy, accountability, clear purpose, balanced choices, and cognitive demand. The research examining the impact of choice shows a positive effect on students' effort, task performance, subsequent learning, and perceived competence. People will be more intrinsically motivated to persist at a task when there is an element of choice. Based on this research, providing choice may be the most obvious way to support a person's experience of autonomy. But we need to be careful with the amount of choice that we are presenting to students. Research from the early 2000s has shown us that choice becomes overwhelming and demotivating when there are a large number of options. So we took that into consideration when developing our choice boards as well. When students practice concepts through online games or when students watch a video on YouTube, how do you hold them accountable? How do you know that they're not sharing answers? How do you know that the parents or siblings are not doing the work rather than the student? Consider the difference between practice that requires a check mark for done and practice that requires you to show your thinking, whether it be annotating text or solving a math problem. How are they going to show their thinking, and how are you going to hold them accountable? Here we have created a Google slide deck, and we have the students taking a clear picture to show their work and to paste it onto the slide. So here was Devin's slide, and he had his parents take a picture and post his work. And Jovi's slide. As a teacher, I can use this as an instructional way to show the differences in how they solve the problem, or I could get them to explain how they solved it, to show each other different strategies. Here is upper grades, middle school, Cooper's work and Ainsley's work. Again, a way that I can see that they actually completed the work, and then I can use it instructionally to get them to talk through what they did to solve the problems.
Another criteria for choice boards is, do they have a clear purpose? And we already discussed the purposes, but consider if there was something that was a prepare activity on the same page as a project. The kids might get very confused about, what am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to already know this and be able to do the project? Or am I supposed to be watching a video to learn it? There has to be a very clear purpose for the kids, and they should be able to communicate what that is. Something to think about is, are there I can statements? Are the students able to articulate what they can do when they've completed these? Also, do you have a clear purpose? Is there a way that you can grade these and give them feedback on how they're performing on them? Finally, students really need to be able to reflect on how they're doing. There should be some sort of student rubric where the student can say, at the beginning, I was maybe a 2 in my understanding, but now that I've gone through this process, I'm a 5. Or maybe it is the student reflects, I'm a 5 already, and I don't need to do a prepare because I've already understand this concept. The fourth criteria is balanced choices. You want to think about the balance of time, and you also want to think about the balance of purpose, like we already discussed. Consider these 2 tasks. Both of them, pretty awesome. However, the first task, when we look at it, and this is a YouTube video that's pretty awesome about how to make a clock with shaving cream, that's kind of a prepare task. It could take the kids maybe 5 minutes after they watch the video to create the shaving cream clock. But when we look at task 2, they already have to know a lot about telling time to be able to complete that task. Plus, that task is going to take significantly more time than doing task number 1. So there has to be a balance of time choices. You also want to think about, if you're giving kids problems, you want to give them the similar amounts in each of the choices. If one choice has 30 problems that I have to solve and the other choice has 5 problems, the students will usually go right to the 5 problems because they want to go to the, I can get this done faster, and it can show the exact same thinking that I would have shown on these 30 problems. So you want to make sure that there's a balance in the number, the time, and the purpose. The 5th criteria is cognitive demand. We know in math that there's 4 levels of cognitive demand. The lower levels require memorization and procedures without connection, whereas the higher levels require procedures with connections, as well as complex non-algorithmic thinking. When we look at choice boards, we need to make sure that the students can pick from a variety of cognitive demands, and that they can't make all choices in either the lower levels or the higher levels. So looking at these 2 problems, think about the cognitive demand. Just for a second, look at them, and I want you to think, what's the cognitive demand? We're not saying either one of these is bad or good. We're just saying, think about the cognitive demand. Okay, so if we look at the first one, solving the following problems, we haven't told the kids they have to use a certain strategy. We haven't told them anything, so they can do whatever they want. So a child could draw tally marks to solve each of those problems. When we look at the second problem, the student really has to know a lot about place value. They have to look at another student's thinking. They have to make judgments, and they have to figure out, how are these 2 things similar? So it's a higher level of cognitive demand than the first part. If a student has a choice between these 2 things, some students will automatically choose a higher and some students will automatically choose the lower. A good choice board should be designed so that the students have the same level cognitive demand within their choices, and that there's a variety on there.
How do you implement choice boards? If you're in the classroom and you're able to be face-to-face with your students, you can use them in the classroom. If you're doing remote learning, distance learning, then students can do choice boards at home. You can send the PDF to parents or to students if the students have their own email account. It's really important that students do the math on paper to show their thinking. In this time of remote learning, we as teachers cannot lose the important instructional strategy of looking at students' work and determining their misconceptions and where their learning is on the spectrum of understanding the concept.
So we've discussed what to look for in choice boards, what makes a good choice board, the reason why you would use them, the research behind them, so you can go out and create your own choice boards. Or if you would like, Allison and I have used all the research we found to create our own choice boards.
So what comes with our choice boards? There are prepare, practice, and project choice boards for each math concept. There is a clear purpose. There is a balance of time. There is a way to hold students accountable. Students will have autonomy. There are also letters to parents, teacher rubrics, and student rubrics. Check out our website, Listen1stLearning.com, as we continue to design and sell choice boards and other instructional tools and resources. Go to the website and sign up to get a freebie for watching the webinar.
When you visit our website, you'll find the freebie for just watching this webinar. The freebie that you get is a PDF that you can edit to give feedback to your students on choice boards. It talks about what you like, it gives you a chance to ask questions. You can then email it to the parents, plus it's a great way to document all the learning that the kids did with their choice boards. Thanks for attending our webinar.